Have you ever wanted to have a tattoo, but just for one night? I'm Rebecca Kemp Brent, an author and educator, and I'd like to show you a really fun idea for using your embroidery machine to come up with a temporary tattoo for a costume or other enjoyable pursuit. I have a couple of samples here to show you. This has got to be one of my all-time favorites, the stitch or die, because it just looks so much like a tattoo. And also you can use smaller designs, outline only designs, like this feather, which I've stitched in a variegated thread just to give it a little more interest. I actually recommend something like the small feather design for starting out because it's easy to stitch and it will go quickly. So come with me over to the sewing machine and let me show you the trick for hooping to embroider. Of course, we have to start out with some pantyhose or tights, and I've found in my experiments that the inexpensive ones really work better for this particular technique, and I would advise you to stay away from the ones that have elastic in the legs, and especially if it says control top or medium control leg or something like that. So the first thing that we have to figure out is exactly how to mark the placement on our pantyhose. In the handout that's available on the website, I've given you a couple of rules of thumb that you can follow to give you an approximate location, but the only really sure way to figure your location is to put on the pantyhose and then take a disappearing marker, either air or water soluble, and just make a nice bold mark, an X up and down and across wherever you would like that design to appear. That way you have the right stretch and everything's just the way you want it in your actual fit. The next step in the process is that I'm going to turn my leg wrong side out. And while I'm doing that, get everything sort of scrunched up just a little bit. It's a good idea to put lotion on your hands, maybe even manicure a little bit before you do this, and also take off your jewelry before you try this technique. So I have my leg wrong side out, and I'm going to take a little piece of cardboard. If you buy your pantyhose or your tights in a package like this, it may have a piece of cardboard about the right size in it. If not, you can use any kind of lightweight cardboard, and you'll notice that I've rounded the corners, and that's just to cut down on the possibility that I'll get a snag. Now I'm going to slip my cardboard into the leg to stretch it just a bit. This process may seem a tiny bit fiddly at first, and what we want to do is get the mark that we made centered on that cardboard just as well as we can. Sometimes that means that you need to twist a little bit on your cardboard. Okay, then once I have that mark pretty much in the center of my cardboard, then I'm going to take my embroidery hoop, and I would advise you to use an embroidery hoop that's this size. This is the 4x4 size or smaller. You might want to try it after you've got some experience with a design up to 5x7, but you're going to have to stretch, so be aware of that and stick with the smaller ones. Now I take my embroidery hoop. You want to be sure that you know which is the top of the hoop, which is marked with a little arrow here, and turn the hoop upside down. This is the inside part of the hoop, the part that doesn't have any brackets on it. And I'm going to slide that into my pantyhose right on top of this piece of cardboard. Now, I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit to make this easier for demonstrating. I want to roll this down. Just kind of roll all that extra fabric downward to get it out of the way. And then I'll just hook it over the top of my cardboard so I can slip this hoop right inside. Now I need a piece of water-soluble adhesive stabilizer that's just slightly bigger than my hoop, and I'm going to peel that off the paper backing. And just stick it down on my pantyhose. So just to recap, this is the wrong side of the pantyhose with the area that I want to embroider near the center of my hoop, and then I'm going to take the outer part of the hoop, turn it upside down, and slide it over the hoop that's inside the pantyhose. Normally, I would not tell you to hoop up in the air, but to put the hoop down on the table, but it's a little easier to hold this up as you're doing the hooping. And then you can tighten the hoop as you need to, just to make sure everything is good and secure. And I'm going to choose my threads for this. You can either use the colored threads that go with your design, or as I said, you can choose a variegated, which I'm going to use today. And in the bobbin, I have just ordinary embroidery bobbin thread. Now this little donut that we made becomes really important. To position this on the machine, I want that donut to be pretty close to the center of the hoop. Then you just slide the hoop into place on the machine, or snap it into place. And I'm going to use my hands to hold the donut of fabric out of the way. Remember, as you're stitching, as long as there's no extra fabric right underneath the needle, you're going to be fine. And also remember to keep your fingers away from the needle and away from the needle bar, because you don't want to get hit, or worse yet, to stitch through something. So I'm going to hold this far out of the way. Be sure that you have lowered your presser foot. And when you hook your hands inside the donut, you can have one thumb free for touching that start-stop button, and away we go. If you have never stitched this design out before, it's a really good idea to sew it first on a piece of scrap fabric, just so that you know which direction the needle is going to move next, especially if it has jump stitches. And I like to slow the machine speed down, and again, that's to give me a little bit more reaction time, just in case I need to reposition things. If you need to stop for any reason, you have that thumb free and you just push the button again to stop the machine. So now we're just going to let this stitch out, and we'll have a feather on our pantyhose. One reason to keep your hands on the fabric as you move is because they're dynamic, so that you can move your hands back and forth a little bit if you need to, as you see the machine starting to approach, as you see that needle coming in your direction. And also because keeping your hands right there keeps them close to that start-stop switch, just in case you need to stop the machine for some reason. You can use your automatic thread cutter, and you can also use the automatic needle threader if you want to. Just be really careful as you do that your fabric is out of the way. So when our embroidery is finished, we take the hoop off the machine, and if you look down inside my donut, you can see I've got a feather. I like to take a little moment now and go ahead and trim any stitches that are on the back of my fabric while it's still in the hoop. But after that, all you have to do is rinse this. This is a water-soluble stabilizer, dissolves right away in water, and your fancy tattoo is ready to go. And if you wonder, what happens when I eventually get a run in those tights? Well, my suggestion is that you cut around your design, just cut really close to the stitches, and then you can applique that on another piece of fabric and give it another shot at life.